After years of touting only homegrown starters were making starts for the Guardians, this offseason they seem to have a help wanted sign outside of the team's pitching factory. We'll talk about how that came to be and why that can be a good admission for the Guardians in 2025.
Tanner Bobby of the Guardians, and you're listening to Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Come on in today's episode of Locked On Guardians. The Guardians did, of course, sign John Means officially. They haven't announced it yet, but more reporters are confirming. We'll talk about that and how the pitching factory went from internal starters only to help wanted and what that means and why it could be a good thing. We'll get into another injury that could lead to an upside for the Guardians this year. We'll talk about an interesting top 100 update, and we'll definitely, I think, today get into the first weekend of college baseball and draft updates at some point as well. Before we get there, I'll let you know I am Justin Ladd. I am your host today. Jeff continues to be out with some personal stuff. I've been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. I was previously editor-in-chief of Guardians Baseball Insider for a couple of seasons. I am currently a freelancer for the News Herald and the Morning Journal up here in the Cleveland area. I have my own Substack at nextyearincleveland.substack.com. Would love if you joined over there for more prospect written content. It's free. And I'm also at Prospects Live doing some Guardians content as well. All right, let's get right into the meat of this one. John Means is officially, well, I shouldn't say officially, is unofficially a Cleveland Guardian. Now we've got multiple reporters in on it that the deal became official. Kylie McDaniel, Zach Meisel, Anthony Castrovince. It is across the board now, so expect this one to be officially announced if it's not already announced by the time you're listening to this, it could be relatively soon. Discussed a lot of interest about John Means on Monday's episode, of course, so you can go back and listen to that if you missed it. I did release that one a little bit late, but I did have that episode up, why they could be interested in John Means, and the deal that is on the table that's reported makes exactly perfect sense with what I said on Monday. This is really a 2026 move, if you look at it. The reported deal on the table is $1 million for 2025. And it's a club option only in 2026 for $7.5 million. The potential return date for John Means is August. He had Tommy John, obviously, in 2024, June. That was his second Tommy John in 18 months. On Monday's show, I went through some of the names you may or may not have been familiar with of two Tommy John survivors, guys who've come back, and it's mostly been a list of relievers. So we'll see about John Means, who will turn 32 before he throws his next pitch, and he'll be 33 in 2026. So it's a 1 year, $1 million deal for this year, and Cleveland has no obligation to pick that deal up in 2026. It is completely up to them. $7.5 million. And I don't see any downside to this deal. I know some people might say, well, that's really shilling for the front office, but it's $1 million for 2025 for a guy who might pitch in August, and he might have a chance to throw some innings in the rotation. He might just rehab. He might get healthy to build up innings for 2026. And this is a guy who could come back in 2026 and be a mainstay in the rotation and try to revive his career. And it's relatively low cost. Again, if 2025 doesn't go well, if he doesn't recover well from Tommy John, if things aren't going in the right direction, if he never gets back on the mound at all, the Guardians can simply say, we're not picking up the club option. We'll go in another direction in 2026. They're only paying $1 million this year to let him basically rehab, and they don't have to have him on any sort of extended or rush schedule. I know they were patient with Matthew Boyd for 2025 or 2024, I should say. And there was a little more urgency there, though, because that was just for 2024. And Boyd was only coming off one Tommy John. He was already 33, and he was looking to get paid in 2025, and he did because he had a good season. So he got back, and he pitched quite a bit, obviously, and pitched very well. A little more urgency on both sides there, again, because of Boyd's age, only having the one Tommy John, and the Guardians absolutely needed him. They needed him without a doubt. There's just very little downside here because John Means doesn't have to pitch in 2025 at all. The Guardians don't necessarily need him, and I'll talk about that in a second. They might need him more for 2026. So there's not a lot of pressure here for either side. John Means can take his rehab slowly, and all he has to do is come back and prove that he can pick up innings in 2026. Now, obviously, you'd like to see something in 2025, the Guardians are going to have to see something that's going to make them want to convince him to pick him up in 2026 for $7.5 million. But that $7.5 million is nothing. Again, I'm gonna point out for the 30,000th time or the first time, Alex Cobb got $17 million over this offseason. Alex Cobb, $17 million. The guy who made like 4 starts or 5 starts in 2025 or 2024, and is 37. Hasn't been healthy and has had multiple surgeries. Now I know John Means has had the 2 Tommy Johns, but we're looking at the cost of pitching. Look at Matthew Boyd got this offseason for a half season of work for a guy who actually really has never been durable, and John Means has never been durable. But there's no downside here. They either get John Means back in 2026 and he becomes a guy they are hoping to carry some innings in the rotation in 2026. It's $7.5 million. That's even for the Guardians for one season. That is not something that's going to hinder anything for them. This can only benefit them. And I'm also fascinated here that we've gone from a team that for years touted that, the homegrown rotation, right? Kluber, Carrasco, Tomlin, Salazar, Clevenger, just the whole succession there that they touted during that last stream of winning before we got into this bridge of this new Shane Bieber was part of that. And now it's Tanner Bybee and Gavin Williams and some other guys. But the big touting thing was this was all homegrown rotation. The Guardians were great at drafting pitching, great at developing pitching. And that's still the case. They're still a good pitching development team. But I think they're finally realizing that they can't do it all internally. And you need a lot of depth. And I think last year obviously taught them a lot of things. But the one good thing they're doing, and I'm not going to shill for the front office here. I know people are going to say that. And hey, I'm still waiting on the first check from the Dolans to cash out. Trust me. That has never happened. Any day now, of course. But this is a good move for the Guardians, and it's a move they have to make. The Matthew Boyd deal last year really helped them out a ton. You can't rely on internally developed pitching forever. When you do develop it, you need to extend it. Tanner Bybee, sorry. You have to recognize where you have some weaknesses or where you have some things developing that you need to address, and this is one of them. And the good thing that the Matthew Boyd deal did for them a year ago is it helped them earn the trust of possible free agent attraction pitchers, and not in the way of obviously big money guys, right? They weren't going to sign Max Fried or Corbin Burns, and I know everyone would love that. I would love that. Maybe Burns, I don't know. Big money free agent starting pitching does always scare me, and we know if you want to put yourself in the shoes of what the payroll is operating at for the front office, probably not a great deal. If you just look at it from the lens of spend money, then yeah, do it. But if you're putting yourself in the front office shoes of what you're forced to operate in, those deals don't work out. The deals that really benefit them are the Matthew Boyds. It's the low upside or the low risk, high reward. And they found, $20 in their pocket with Matthew Boyd last year. He came back. He was healthy. He was good. They got into the playoffs. He pitched some big playoff games. He got paid. It worked out for everybody. And it worked out for the Guardians long term because think of it as like an employer benefit, right? If you have a reputation out there of something you do well, being a good employer, you're going to attract better talent. And money is obviously a hindrance to this front or this franchise. We live in that reality. So you have to be able to attract talent like John Means, like Matthew Boyd. And you have to get them to trust you. Like Shane Bieber. That's a great example, right? Shane Bieber trusted them more to help him on his rehab to get healthy so he can cash out next offseason, this coming offseason, 2025. And that attracts other things. And I know it's not really fun to sit here and say, well, if we get this guy who was hurt and he comes back great, he can be good for us for a few months. I know that's not sexy. That's not fun. But Matthew Boyd did play a big role for them last year. Getting Shane Bieber back for them this year is important. It's a big deal. It's something they had to have if they're going to be a playoff team again. And I know, again, I'm going to say, this team was 3 wins away from making the World Series in 2024. And maybe they didn't necessarily play like a team that was going to make the World Series in that LCS. They had some bumps in the road there, right? So they're not acting like a team that did that. I think I've said multiple times in this podcast, I would have liked them to go out and trade prospects for proven talent, to spend money on guys that you can count on to upgrade your team this year. I would have loved that. I think that's what a team that was on the brink of a World Series should do. A team that won a playoff series and had their chances against the Yankees who went to the World Series. And the AL's wide open again in 2025. There's no reason they shouldn't do that. But in saying that they haven't done that and they're not going to do it because they are who they are and living in reality of today, these are the kind of moves that matter. Getting Matthew Boyds, getting Shane Biebers to trust you, John Means. I don't know if John Means is going to give them anything in 2025, but it's certainly important for them in 2026. I did see one, Kevin, who's I know is a regular listener, shout out to Kevin, was talking about how he felt like this pushes the timeline out. All their moves are pushing their timeline out. And I understand that. I can see where you're coming from on, well, it just feels like they're kicking the can down the road. And that's not necessarily true with this move. I know this is a 2026 move, if anything, the way I look at it. But remember, the Guardians operate in a way that they're looking at all the possibility in the future. They're not looking at just 2025. And again, for a team that was in the LCS a year ago, it'd be great if they looked at 2025 as an opportunity to say, let's get in there. I mean, they signed Juan Encarnacion going into 2017, and they made that a priority for 2017 and 2018. They did. But more often than not, the Guardians are looking in competitive windows. They're looking in multiple scenarios, multiple outcomes, multiple years at a time. They have to take that view lens of their roster. They have to be able to look at 2026 at the same time as looking at 2025. So, yeah, maybe this is sort of building out the timeline, but we know the Guardian strategy. This is a team that wants to win 85 to 95 games a year, every year, in hopes that they don't dip below the 500 mark in their down years so they can continue to contend every year because they don't feel like they already have very tepid fan support now. I know the attendance was better in 2024, and I'm not making an excuse for the team. Believe me, I'm not making an excuse for the team at all. I've said this multiple times. If you listen this offseason, I wish they would do more to improve the team coming off of last season. But they're looking at multiple year windows. They're looking at multiple years and building this roster. So John Means matters to the 2026 roster. I think it's actually better that you're not counting on him in 2025. They have options where they don't have to. So I don't see the downside in this deal. It helps them next year. There's a scenario where it could help him this year, but I also think that scenario where he helps them this year is either a really good thing because it means he comes back strong and he's really good, but it also means a bad thing because a lot of guys in front of him wouldn't be pitching or wouldn't be good unless he just really blows everybody away, which I'd be shocked by. So probably better that he is just a 2026 option. I have no problem with doing that. I don't. And this is how the Guardians can find undervalued talent when they don't spend money. It's earning the trust of these kind of guys and being able to bring in talent like this. Other teams would do it. Other teams would bring in John Means and try to get something out of him. We've seen this other places. There's deals I wish the Guardians would have done. I think it was the Angels pitcher we talked about all offseason. We wanted the Guardians to get whose name slips, but he goes to Boston, and I would have liked to have seen them do that, but they didn't. They did this one. So I don't see the downside of the John Means deal. Let me know how you feel about the John Means deal. Let me know if you think there is downside to it at all. And if so, what it is. All right. Talk more about the pitching staff in 2025, why this deal matters. We will talk about a top 100 prospect update that I found interesting. We're going to talk about the best front offices in baseball. I saw a recent list of those. I was very surprised by it. And then we'll also talk about the first weekend in Division I baseball as it relates to the draft at the end of this episode of Locked On Guardians. All right, we talked about how the Guardians are looking for a winning strategy in 2025. They're looking for a winning strategy in 2026. And that may look different to a lot of people, but it's how the best teams make it to the World Series. The same goes for you in life. If you have a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. They make it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. They are America's one of America's #1 leading insurance brokers. They have nearly 40 years of experience, and they've helped over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. That's a long time in the game. What sets SelectQuote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer kind of one-size-fit-all policies, they have licensed agents that are going to tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. So if you're in good health, you might qualify for same-day coverage up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. It's something important that we have to do that we don't always like to talk about, but it is something important. SelectQuote can help you with these kind of things. Get the right life insurance for you. That's important. Find the right plan for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. SelectQuote, they shop, you save. Appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you might get podcasts. Let us know where you're listening. We have all the data, but love to hear you check in. There's a survey in there. We've gotten pretty good survey responses. It's in the show description if you haven't taken the survey yet. It's your chance to shape the show. Let us know what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of. Don't say intros. Any other topics you might have, any feedback for us that can make the show better. This is your show. This is not our show. It's not my show. It is your show. You are choosing to listen every day or whatever days you're listening to, and we really, really appreciate that. I can't tell you, especially these days, how important that is to us and to me and to have this connection with you. So we always want to make sure that you're enjoying Locked On Guardians for the time you're listening, and the survey is one of the best ways you can do that to let us know what you want from the show. We are going to introduce some new segments this year. I've got some ideas. I'm going to touch on one at the end of today's show, actually. So I'm really excited about that. I will have some guests on later this week, at least one, maybe two, maybe three, depending on how the rest of the week plays out. I know I have at least one guest lined up that I think you'll enjoy if you have been listening to sports radio in Cleveland. So stay tuned to that. All right, let's look at more reasons. So let's look at the 2025 pitching options now for the Guardians. Tanner Bybee, obviously, I really want to hear next time we talk to Stephen Vogt or Tanner Bybee when they're going to name the opening day starter, because I think it should be Tanner Bybee getting the opening day start. You got Luis Ortiz, Gavin Williams, Ben Lively. And then your other guy, those are your four, right? Those are kind of the four, I think, that are locked in for the most part. Then you got McKenzie and Jacob Junis, who will be stretched out as a starter, but, says he's open to whatever role the Guardians want to go with for him. So Jacob Junis will have the option of being a starter for them. Cody, obviously, Logan Allen. I said Cody. Logan Allen, Slade Ciccone. Then you've got Doug Nikhazy. And at the back half of that, you've got Shane Bieber and John Means. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is 11 starters for the Guardians in 2025, right? That's a pretty good chunk. You're counting on Bybee to be your horse until the second half or the whole year, really, because I don't know, Bieber, you're hoping for the best, but you got to prepare for some hiccups there, right? Luis Ortiz, I'm excited for him. I think a lot of people are excited for him. Gavin Williams, still a question mark. We don't know yet. Ben Lively, can he repeat what he did a year ago? Tristan McKenzie, massive question mark. Jacob Junis has had health issues. We don't know if he's going to be a starter reliever. Then you're talking about counting on Logan Allen, who really hit some hiccups last year, had to go to AAA. Slade Ciccone, who, again, a lot to be excited about there, but has not proven at the major league level just yet. Doug Nikhazy has no major league experience yet. And then there's Bieber and Means. Let's remember that last year, this team got 21 starts from Carlos Carrasco. And nothing against Carlos Carrasco. Obviously, beloved in terms of his time here in Cleveland. Veteran leader. Great stories over a lot of years. Pitching some big games for the Guardians. Probably not a guy who should have made 21 starts for the Guardians a year ago. And it's amazing they made the playoffs doing that. And that's, again, testament to Carrasco for being healthy enough at his age, taking the ball every fifth day and doing his part. It wasn't pretty. They needed him, but it wasn't pretty. Because Tristan McKenzie was not part of this solution last year. Gavin Williams was hurt. Logan Allen had a hard time being a part of the solutions. Oh, I didn't mention Joey Cantillo in that. So that's 12, Joey Cantillo. This is a team last year, though, too, that had 4 starts from Xavier Curry, who's now gone, unfortunately. I always like Curry, but a lot of people know there's a personal reason behind that. Alex Cobb made 3 starts for them, and we know how that went. Alex Cobb reference. Spencer Howard. Do y'all remember Spencer Howard? This guy was here for 2 games for the Guardians, started a game. So this team had if you don't count Nick Sandlin and Andrew Walters making spot starts or opener starts, that's 12 guys who started for them last year. And again, Carlos Carrasco started some of them. Xavier Curry started for some of them. Alex Cobb and Spencer Howard. Tell me, from this group, 4 pitchers that are an upgrade over those guys. And McKenzie could be. Allen could be. Williams could be. They got to prove it. Ciccone could be. I got to put Joey Cantillo on this graphic if you're watching on YouTube. But they need a lot of arms to get through the season. They found that out last year. I think it's good the Guardians admitted that they didn't have enough depth last year. And maybe this seems like an overcorrection, and maybe they should have done more with the offense. We're certainly going to find that out. I got something to talk about offensively in the final segment we'll get into. But that was a lot of guys in this roster last year that you probably didn't want starting games for a playoff team. And again, this team that made the playoffs. And I think it's also good they have all these options to start, considering they taxed their bullpen very heavily a year ago. This is going to help potentially offset some of the bullpen regression, some of the tiredness coming into the year, maybe the overextension, the overuse of them last year. No guarantees, but all of this I think is to help that, offset that. And we're going to talk about whether or not they're going to be better offensively or not at some point. And also look at the 2026 rotation, right? For 2026, you're looking at Tanner Bybee, obviously, hopefully. We don't know about Ben Lively. Gavin Williams could be here. That's 2 guys at least. Ortiz should be here. That's 3. Bieber probably won't be here if things go well. You want Bieber to do good in 2025 for the team's sake and his sake, so he probably won't be here. Nobody knows about McKenzie and Allen. We got to find that out this year. Again, nobody really knows about Williams either. If John Means is healthy in 2026, Joey Cantillo and Slade Ciccone maybe are all guys that can factor into that. And I didn't even mention, Vince Velasquez, Colby Allard, all that kind of stuff. I don't know about Allard, but Velasquez is more interesting to me out of those 2. They need somebody in this rotation, and you're gonna have a hard time finding a John Means on the free agent market this offseason for $7.5 million if he's healthy. That's just a fact. We know what the pitching prices are. So again, I think the 2026 rotation probably needs John Means to be healthy. Now we can go into next year and talk about if it's a good thing or a bad thing they're counting on him. But the fact is, if he's healthy and ready to go, they could have him for a really good bargain. So again, I fail to see the downside in that issue in the signing. I fail to see the downside in all these rotation moves. Again, the Guardians are trying to continue to sturdy their reputation about rehabbing guys, getting that kind of talent, and they're continuing to be open to bringing in outside sources of pitching, which before they didn't bring in outside pitching. They did it all internally, and that worked for a while. They're recognizing that doesn't. They also need to recognize when they develop internally, they got to keep some of those guys. Again, as I said before. So I think all these things can be a good thing for the Guardians, offsetting some bullpen regression and some overtaxedness, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's get into the offense. I have an interesting idea. I think that there's an injury on this team this year. And injuries are never good. But this has a chance for the Guardians to turn it into something good. Potentially, even if it's not good, it's at least answering a question, I think. Be curious to see if they do it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about top front offices, some college baseball, maybe some drama at third base around Major League Baseball that I found interesting. All in the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. All right, injuries, obviously not ever good, right? Never a good thing to get someone, especially key in your own, on your own roster, to be injured. I guess a key contributor to your roster, and that's David Fry. David Fry is going to miss probably time until June. Where that's June or July is what we're talking about. I think there is a possibility that this could turn into something good for the Guardians. This is a roster, obviously, that does need to rely on platooning because they don't have clear answers at a lot of positions. And I know people hate that. And they say, just, draft better, develop better, spend money, whatever. I'm all for that. Again, let's deal in reality right now. The Kyle Manzardo David Fry platoon last September and playoffs was fantastic. It was one of the best weapons they had in this offense to go around Jose Ramirez. That's why they're hitting second. And this team would be better, and it will be better if David Fry comes back and is healthy and hits well from the DH spot to have these two platoon. In the meantime, I want to see what the Guardians do with Kyle Manzardo while David Fry is out, because it's essentially going to be some sort of combination of Santana, Manzardo, and I think John Kenzie Noel probably pitches in at first base a little bit too, where he actually is a pretty good defender at first base, by the way. Jeff and I are not big fans of him defensively in right field, but at first base, I have to say, I've seen him play, and I think he can play it. I do. I don't know if he's a gold glover like Carlos Santana, but hey, Carlos Santana's around. Might be able to help the guy. I also think Carlos Santana can help Kyle Manzardo, and he can do that whether or not David Fry is hurt or not. But I want to see if the Guardians will not platoon Kyle Manzardo with David Fry out. I think this is an opportunity for Kyle Manzardo to prove he can hit lefties, for the Guardians to see it, because if he can, then boom, you've got a really good solution there. If Kyle Manzardo comes out and proves he can handle lefties or gets his feet wet and makes some progress there, because he hasn't done it great in the minor leagues. Although I will point out, and this is why I'm bringing this up, 108 plate appearances last year against lefties in AAA. I know, not a big sample size, 842 OPS. By far the best numbers he's ever had against lefties in the minors. I would like to see, and they're probably going to DH him, but I also want to talk about this a little bit too. I would like to see them play Manzardo against lefties early on while David Fry is out. Give him a chance. I'm not saying you got to play him against all lefties. If you're facing Chris Sale or Garrett Crochet or whatever, you can maybe pick your spots and pick, if Cole Reagans is tough or Tarek Skubal's a little bit tough, pick your spots against other guys, right? But give him a chance to play against lefties. See what he can do. Because if he does well and he proves it and he at least gets the experience, you have something there more than a platoon bat, which is incredibly valuable. Obviously, he's already on the strong side of the platoon, being left-handed. But then you don't have to necessarily have that flaw in your roster where he's always got to be pinch hit for against lefties. Find out. I'd like to see what happens while David Fry is out. I think he'll probably DH quite a bit, and they'll move around again. Noel and Santana Manzardo. I also think they should give Manzardo a shot at first base too. I know Carlos Santana is a great defender at first. He finally won an overdue Gold Glove in 2024 for Minnesota, but he's also 38, and I think it might be wise for them to give him some days off at DH, just like Jose Ramirez, and keep his body fresh for the year. Play Kyle Manzardo at first base. He needs experience. He needs to get a handle on first base if he is going to be the first baseman of the future. So I think it makes sense for them to get him time at first base, get him time against lefties. And with David Fry out, they have an opportunity to do that. They have that spot open, keeping an eye on how they handle that. Top 100 prospect update. We saw Fangraphs drop the top 100s. I'm not really looking at other teams' lists as much, other outlets' list right now, because I am working on my own over at Next Year in Cleveland on Substack. But I thought it was interesting that Angel Hanau was the top prospect for the Guardians above Travis Bazzana, 33-36. I can make the case for that. I can. Because Hanau has a good chance to be a much better defender and having, I don't want to say similar offensive upside, but close to similar. I think there's a good chance, he's a switch hitter too, that Hanau could be a 2020 guy and play better defense than Travis Bazzana. Travis Bazzana is a 2020 guy. Who probably is going to walk a lot more than Angel Hanau is. So there's more value there. But Hanau is got potential to be a 2020 guy who's a good defender at short or second or third, depending on where things go. So the Angel Hanau hype train is going up there. I know he was really high in Cooper Ingle, Eric Longenhang at Fangraphs. So they're guys he was super high on. Parker Messick, that I'm not quite as high on him as I like Parker Messick, but I think Eric's a little higher on Parker Messick than I am. Maybe even higher than Juan Brito than I am, and certainly higher than Welvin Francisca than I am. I'm not that high on Welvin Francisca. We'll talk about that another day. But if you haven't checked it out, it's an interesting update. I absolutely see the reasoning on him having Angel Hanau over Travis Bazzana. You can make a case, and that's a great thing because Travis Bazzana is a top 30 prospect for the most part, or top 40, whatever you want to say. Other outlets have him rated higher. So check that out. That was interesting. All right, real quickly before we get out of here, top front offices in baseball. I saw this going around on online today, and it came from MLB.com's Brian Kenny, or MLB Network's Brian Kenny. If you're looking on YouTube, I have the list up, but I'll read it through if you're on audio. Number 1, Andrew Friedman, Dodgers. Hard to argue with that, right? Very hard to argue with that. Number 2, Alex Anthopoulos of Atlanta. They've done a great job of getting young guys to sign really under market value extensions. Ronald Acuna, Ozzy Albies, God knows who else. So, okay, fine. They're getting some really cheap extensions. They're winning every year. They're making the playoffs. No issues there. Eric Neander at Tampa Bay. Sure, Tampa Bay is always churning out interesting talent. Number 4, Dave Dombrowski of Philadelphia. This is a little bit above where I'd have him because Dave Dombrowski never builds good farm systems. He's good at trading guys, which is, I guess, important, but a lot of free agent acquisitions in Philadelphia. Brian Cashman, number 5. Yankees prospects. I know he's not necessarily the prospect guy, but it's very little internal development. Mike Rizzo, 6 for Washington. I'm not seeing this one. David Stearns of the Mets now at 7. Sure, things were good in Milwaukee. The farm system in New York for the Mets is getting better. AJ Preller, number 8 for San Diego. Done a great job building farm systems. And he's traded a lot of those guys. Good for him. They haven't won anything. They made some playoff series. They haven't won their division. Obviously, they play in the same division as the Dodgers. That's tough. Chris Young for Texas. I know the Rangers won the World Series a couple years ago. 2 years ago, sure. Mike Elias from Baltimore at 10. Not a single mention of a Guardians player on Brian Kenny's list. A Guardians front office guy. I would certainly take Chris Antonetti over Mike Rizzo. I think I'd take him over Chris Young. I know they just won a World Series there, but that, there's a longevity to this thing. I think I'd take him over the Tampa Bay guys, even though Tampa Bay is the only team Cleveland doesn't do well trading with. I don't see how he's any different than AJ Preller. They've accomplished most of the same things, except the Guardians play in a worse division, so they win their division occasionally, and the Dodgers can't, or the Padres can't because of the Dodgers. They build similar farm systems. Preller just trades more of them. And the Padres have spent more money, so I'm not sure I buy that on Preller either. I think Chris Anthony is a top 10, or if you want to say Mike Chernoff, I think Chernetti is a top 10 front office in baseball. Let me know what you think in the comments. Very quickly before we get out of here, I did say I was going to get you some D1 baseball stuff over the weekend. So I paid a little attention to college baseball over the weekend, as much as I could. I was a little busy with family stuff and whatnot, but here's what I did pay attention to. Some guys I'm putting on my Guardians type list for the draft. The first one, I think Jeff's already mentioned, Brendan Summerhill. He had a decent weekend, had 4 hits against Clemson on the 15th on Saturday. He went 2 for 4 with a home run, walked all 3 games this weekend, stole a base, struck out twice. Not like a fantastic great weekend, but he had a good game against Clemson in the Shriners Classic. I like Summerhill a little bit. I'm a little bit light on him in terms of what he could be in the future, but he did have a good game against Clemson. Clemson, obviously, a very well-regarded team. So keeping an eye on that. Looking at Dean Curley from the Tennessee team. I've long liked Tennessee hitters the last couple of seasons. Dean Curley, I think, is a guy who could play third base. Had 4 hits over the weekend against them, including a homer that was to Hofstra. So let's put out our usual February, March disclaimer on college baseball is when you're looking at the Tennessees of the world and the Wake Forests of the world, be careful early on who they're playing because they're not playing top tier teams. They are in spring training mode themselves. So when you see those big numbers, those inflated stats in February and March, that's great because that's what top players, first round players should be doing. They should be having big weekends like Dean Curley, who went 4 for 9 against Hofstra with a home run and a walk. That's what they should be doing. On the flip side, if you're interested in a smaller school guy, like a Fresno State, even though not that small, Murph Gray, other guys like that, if you're interested in a small school guy, watch how they do against big teams early on if they play better. And then we get to conference play. Take a look at the Dean Curleys, the Brendan Summerhills, and I'm also watching Merrick Houston from Wake Forest, who had 3 home runs, but again, against LIU and some other small schools. So, beware of all that stuff. But, yeah, Merrick Houston, great weekend. Brendan Summerhill, solid. Dean Curley's a guy that's on my radar now from Tennessee. Some guys to add if you're interested in any of that. All right. Did not get to the drama in Boston with Rafael Devers, so we will save that for a Locked On Guardians Leftovers episode. And how you can listen to Locked On Guardians Leftovers with me and Jeff is become an insider. Once a month, Jeff and I are doing a Leftovers episode, and right now we're talking about the third base drama in Boston at this point. We're going to talk about possible lockout in 2026. I'm sure we'll get to more draft stuff on that show. So if any of that interests you, or you want access to a subscriber-only mailbag, insider-only mailbag that we'll do once a month, become an insider. We'll do that. As I mentioned on Monday's show, Jeff put up a bunch of data for 2025 draft-eligible players. We're talking contact rates, exit velocity, swinging strike rates, chase rates, all fun stuff that we know teams look at, that we look at. That's all in a spreadsheet Jeff did. He's going to add more information to that as the season goes on. That is available as part of an insider. You'll get that text when you sign up, and it'll give you the link to find all that stuff and bonus episodes, all that cool stuff. Plus, I've been talking with the insiders all day in the last 24 hours about John Means and other stuff. So sign up to do that. We're really enjoying our conversations over there with a lot of people. We appreciate everybody there. If not, thanks for tuning in. That's okay. We appreciate, again, all the support you guys give us over here on YouTube and all where you get podcasts. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening every day. I'll be back tomorrow with you solo, me again. So hope you're enjoying things with me solo again. Stock Watch Wednesday. I picked this up from one of my favorite Ohio State podcasts. They do stock watches on every Wednesday. Something we're going to do every Wednesday this year, all season long. We're going to have it. This might be a segment. I don't know if it'll be a whole show, but it'll definitely be a segment we're going to do a lot this season. So tune in to see what that looks like tomorrow. I'm going to talk about guys I'm buying stock on, who I'm selling stock on, prospects, regular season stuff, any number of topics. So if you got anything you're selling stock on in terms of the Guardians baseball, whether it's prospects, major league players, trades, the TV deal, whatever it is you're selling or buying stock on because you like it or dislike it, let me know in the comments. I'll read them too. I will have mine for you on tomorrow's episode. And then hopefully the last couple of episodes this week, I will have some guests for you as well. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for downloading daily. We definitely appreciate that. Please set up to download the episode daily wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And it helps us have a nice bank of supporters. And make sure you're hitting the bell on YouTube. Make sure you never miss a video as well. I'll be back again tomorrow to have more to talk about. And thank you for listening in the meantime. Go, Guardians, go, and brave that cold. I promise baseball's just around the corner.